Sienna Shaw quickly became a central figure in the Terrifier franchise. Debuting as the protagonist in Terrifier 2 and continuing her story in Terrifier 3, played by Lauren Lavera, Sienna stands out as not just another final girl, but as a heroine with mysterious and potentially supernatural powers. Her character is a stark contrast to the movie's villain, Art the Clown, who thrives on chaos, brutality, and pure evil. In a genre saturated with slasher antagonists who dominate the screen, Sienna offers a fresh perspective by blending vulnerability with strength, making her more than just a victim trying to survive. Her significance lies not only in her ability to face Art head-on, but also in the emotional depth and mythology that surrounds her, hinting at much larger forces at play. Through her journey, she moves from a state of personal trauma and grief to becoming a beacon of hope, especially for her younger brother Jonathan. As the audience learns more about Sienna, they are left with compelling questions about her origins, her connection to Art, and the powers that she seems to be developing over time. In this video, we're going to be taking a deep dive into Sienna's story, looking at her backstory, exploring the events of Terrifier 2 and 3, and then speculate on the mystery surrounding her character and what could possibly happen in Terrifier 4. Let's get into it. Let's start with an overview of who she is, her personality. Sienna is depicted as a fiercely protective older sister to Jonathan and someone who shoulders much of the emotional burden in her family. She is strong-willed, intelligent, and compassionate, but also deeply affected by her father's death and the strain it's placed on her relationship with her mother. The audience sees her as a character that's trying to move forward with her life while internally battling trauma, grief, and maybe guilt. The death of Sienna's father is a key element of her backstory. While he's not physically present in the films, aside from one flashback in Terrifier 3, his influence is everywhere. He left behind a series of strange drawings, many of which seem to predict the horrific events that unfold in the movies. His fixation on Art the Clown and his creation of Sienna's costume, including a mysterious sword, suggests that he may have had some knowledge of the supernatural or foresaw a future conflict involving his daughter. Terrifier 3 shows us a moment between Sienna and her father. She's disappointed that her comic book artist father is always creating such strong male characters, and so he promises to make a female lead. And so he does. It of course resembles Sienna in how she will come to look in her fight against Art. The flashback moment ends with the passing of the drawing from father to daughter, but there's an odd shift in the father's state, almost seemingly possessed for a moment. Then a red light appears from behind the door, and it seems like he knows what's happening. Perhaps it's the ninth circle, hell. Who knows for sure, but these are the questions that are likely to be answered in the fourth and final installment. But anyway, back to what we do know. The strained relationship between Sienna, her mother, and Jonathan also forms a critical part of her journey. Her mother, devastated of course by her husband's death, is emotionally distant and often clashes with her children. Meanwhile, Jonathan is fascinated by the drawings their father left behind and becomes obsessed with Art the Clown, even wanting to dress up as him for Halloween. This creates a dynamic where Sienna is left as both a protector and a caregiver, despite her own struggles. But on the flip side, she becomes increasingly worried about the mental state of her younger brother. After all, worshipping a real-life, possibly still active serial killer isn't very healthy. Sienna's emotional arc in Terrifier 2 is compelling, as she evolves from a young woman burdened by personal grief into a warrior fighting for her life and her family. At the start of the film, she is dealing with panic attacks, sleep paralysis, and haunting visions, perhaps a manifestation of her unresolved trauma. But these dreams, often featuring Art the Clown, foreshadow her eventual confrontation with him. And as the film progresses, Sienna's journey becomes one of self-discovery. She learns that she has a greater purpose, connected to the strange occurrences surrounding her family and her father's cryptic legacy. By the end of Terrifier 2, Sienna is no longer just a survivor, she's a fighter. Her willingness to confront the seemingly invincible Art the Clown and her apparent resurrection after a near-death experience signal her transformation into a figure of immense importance in the Terrifier universe. So let's actually take a look at her journey through Terrifier 2. At the beginning of the movie, Sienna's world seems relatively normal. She's preparing for Halloween, crafting a detailed warrior costume inspired by drawings her father made before his death. However, from the outset, strange supernatural occurrences begin to disrupt her life. She is plagued by intense nightmares involving Art the Clown, and eerie coincidences begin to pile up. This begins to unravel the normalcy of her life, and it becomes clear that Sienna is somehow connected to the horrors that are about to unfold. Sienna's connection to the sword, which her father left behind, becomes increasingly significant. The weapon feels like more than just a prop for her costume, but its true nature is not fully revealed until later on in the story. Art the Clown's reign of terror begins anew, and he slowly draws closer to Sienna and her family. As the film progresses, it becomes clear that Sienna is more than just a random target for Art. His interest in her seems almost personal, as if he's drawn to her by some unseen force. The events of Terrifier 2 revolve around Art's brutal killings and Sienna's growing awareness of the threat he poses, not only to her, but to her family. The dream sequence in the film where Sienna finds herself trapped in the Clown Cafe with Art is a key moment.
Drop on by the Clown Cafe.
This surreal, nightmarish scene hints at the deeper connection between Sienna and the clown, possibly suggesting that their fates are intertwined in ways the audience doesn't yet fully understand. On the night of Halloween, Sienna prepares to go to a party with her friends. She wears a costume her father designed for her, an intricately crafted armor set complete with angel wings and a sword. This costume symbolizes her transformation into a warrior figure, both literally and figuratively, as she faces increasing dangers throughout that night. Now, while at the party, Sienna experiences disturbing hallucinations. These unsettling visions cause her to break down in the middle of the party, overwhelmed by the supernatural forces that are surrounding her. Meanwhile, Art the Clown has begun his killing spree, terrorizing anyone in his path, including a particularly now iconic scene in a bedroom. Now, I definitely cannot show that scene here for obvious reasons, but if you want to just Google Terrifier 2 bedroom scene, it's on YouTube. So if you haven't seen it, check it out. Just don't eat a big meal beforehand. You've been warned. Anyway, these attacks also include Jonathan and their mother, Barbara. So while Sienna is out at the party, Jonathan is at home, becoming increasingly paranoid about Art's presence. He argues with their mother, Barbara, who refuses to believe that Art is a genuine threat. This culminates in Art the Clown brutally murdering Barbara as she is cleaning her car. She wipes away some soap to reveal Art sat in the driver's seat. He lifts up a sawn-off shotgun and, well, essentially blows her head off. It's a brutal kill. Jonathan flees their home after learning of their mother's death. Sienna becomes emotionally devastated, of course. She eventually tracks down Jonathan to a haunted attraction at a nearby carnival, where Art the Clown has taken him captive. The carnival becomes the setting for the climactic showdown between Sienna and Art, with the location mirroring many of the terrifying elements in Sienna's earlier dreams. The haunted attraction is filled with eerie sets and gruesome displays, creating a surreal and nightmarish backdrop for their final confrontation. At the carnival, Sienna comes face to face with Art, who has Jonathan trapped. She fights to protect her brother while also dealing with the terrifying realization that the dream world she's been experiencing may be bleeding into reality. This is where her supernatural connection to the sword becomes even more important. In the climactic sequence, Sienna is forced to battle Art in the depths of the haunted attraction. Art brutally injures her, and in a moment of pure horror, she is stabbed and thrown into a water tank, seemingly left to drown. As she sinks into the tank, it appears as though Sienna's life is coming to an end. However, this is where the supernatural elements of Sienna's story fully manifest. Just as she seems to be at death's door, and the sword that has followed her throughout this story begins to glow once again. It's at this moment that Sienna is resurrected, bursting forth from the water tank with newfound strength and determination. This miraculous resurrection suggests that Sienna's role in the battle against Art may be tied to something much larger than just mere survival. After her resurrection, Sienna confronts Art one final time. With the glowing sword in hand, she manages to overpower him, delivering a brutal final blow that, well, incapacitates him and decapitates him. This moment marks a turning point for Sienna. She is no longer just a victim of Art's violence, but a warrior who can fight back. In the aftermath of the battle, Sienna is left to pick up the pieces of her shattered life. She has survived the impossible and protected her brother, but the film leaves many questions about her true nature and the extent of her powers, well, just unanswered. Is she truly connected to something divine or supernatural, or is the sword itself imbued with some kind of powers that are beyond her understanding? Moreover, while Art is defeated, he is not permanently killed. The final scene of this movie hints that Art's evil may not be gone for good, leading us on to the events of Terrifier 3. Sienna begins the film recovering from the previous ordeal, having been released from a psychiatric facility. She then goes to stay with her Aunt Jessica and Uncle Greg, along with their daughter Gabby. Sienna quickly becomes very close with Gabby, who massively looks up to Sienna. Her brother Jonathan is now in college, but their relationship is strained due to the unresolved trauma and the horrifying events that they survived. Sienna's mental health continues to deteriorate throughout the movie as she starts to suspect that Art the Clown is back. especially after seeing a figure resembling him while shopping at a mall. Her brother, now skeptical, is hesitant to believe her, reflecting the emotional toll and denial that has built up over time. These cracks in their bond become more pronounced as Sienna continues to have disturbing visions and become increasingly paranoid, convinced that she's still linked to Art in some supernatural way. She even comes across letters from Jonathan from a few years back where he writes to her to explain his theories about how Art is a demon, and for that level of evil to even exist, there must be the equivalent good to balance it out. And she is that good. She is the angel to fight Art's demon. But as time has passed, Jonathan has moved on and is trying to get over his past traumas. Art's rampage resumes with even more gruesome and inventive killings. Dressed as a deranged Santa Claus, he terrorizes both children and adults at a mall, culminating in a horrific bombing that leaves Sienna convinced that her worst fears have come true. Art then sets his sights on Sienna and her family, leading to a heart-wrenching confrontation where she finds herself in a deadly showdown with both Art and the pale little girl, who now inhabits Victoria's body. At least, I think. The climax of Terrifier 3 is deeply personal for Sienna, as she is tied up along with her aunt, while her uncle's remains are hung up on the wall with his head at the top of the Christmas tree. She then witnesses the brutal torture and murder of her Aunt Jess and is taunted by Victoria and Art. And in one of the most shocking moments, Sienna discovers that her brother Jonathan has been killed off-screen, with his head used as a grotesque prop in Art's sick games. Despite her overwhelming grief, Sienna manages to fight back, using a mysterious object hinted at earlier in the film, a present that she and Jonathan had discussed. This present was, well, obviously the sword, which she eventually manages to get with the help of Gabby, and fights back against Art and Victoria. After some torture of her own, she eventually overcomes Victoria, cutting off her head and taking out Art. However, the blood from Victoria seemingly melts the floor, revealing a red pit leading straight to hell, straight to the ninth circle. Gabby falls into this pit, and the only way that Sienna can think to save her is to use the sword, lowering the handle of the sword into the pit for Gabby to grab onto. However, this of course means that Sienna has to hold the sharp blade and use that to pull Gabby up with it. And let's be honest, that wasn't the brightest idea. The sword slices straight through her hand and Gabby falls into the pit. After realizing that Art's body has now gone, she looks down at her wounded hands, and to her amazement, they heal in front of her own eyes. More powers unlocked. Now this is essentially where Sienna's story ends in Terrifier 3. So what do we think is going to happen in number 4, the closing, the final chapter? Let's take a look at some theories. Throughout Terrifier 2 and 3, it becomes increasingly clear that Sienna is more than just a typical survivor. Hints of her supernatural connection to Art, especially after her resurrection in number 2, and Victoria's line in Terrifier 3 about her being chosen, suggest that she is destined for a larger role in this cosmic battle between good and evil. Terrifier 4 could delve deeper into Sienna's true origins and the nature of her powers, and one theory is that Sienna may be part of a divine plan to destroy Art, representing an angelic or otherworldly force meant to balance this chaos. This one is more than just a theory, it's kind of truly hinted at within number 3, but you get what I'm saying. A common fan theory about number 4 is that the film will finally begin to explore the origins of Art. So far the series has deliberately left out his backstory, allowing him to function as an almost mythical figure of evil. However, with each film, his supernatural abilities have become more apparent. From surviving a decapitation to causing strange visions, Art is clearly more than just a man in a clown suit. Will we see more about what he is and where he came from in the following movie? Let me know what you think in the comments. Ultimately, Terrifier 4 might serve as the final confrontation between Sienna and Art. Their fates have been intertwined since number 2, and a climactic battle between the two seems inevitable. Whether this will be the last film in the series or not, Terrifier 4 could set the stage for an epic, possibly world-ending battle between these two forces. Sienna Shaw has quickly become one of the most compelling characters in modern horror, standing out as a final girl with a unique blend of vulnerability, strength, and a mysterious supernatural destiny. Across the 2 movies that she's been in so far, she evolves from a young woman coping with trauma into a fierce warrior, possibly chosen for a greater battle against Art the Clown. Her story is one of great transformation, both internal as she deals with grief and guilt, and external as she uncovers her latent powers that are tied to her family's dark history. The unresolved questions surrounding Sienna, her connection to Art and true nature of her father's legacy, and the depth of her powers set the stage for an even more intriguing final installment. with theories swirling about her potential divine role and the inevitable clash between the two main characters. The journey is far from over. Will Sienna rise fully as the force capable of defeating art, or will her connection to the supernatural lead her down an even darker path? Personally, I already cannot wait for Terrifier 4. I know number 3's only just come out, but it's just given me more excitement and more questions for the next film. Damien Leone, please don't take too long with this one. Let me know, as always, all of your theories in the comments down below. I really want to discuss this. I'm super Terrifier passionate right now. I even masking taped the poster behind me because I didn't have time to frame it, but yeah, it's a cool poster. Anyway, let me know your thoughts. Thank you all so much for watching this deep dive into Sienna Shaw today. Also, would you like to see more of these sort of videos, deep dives into characters from my favorite horror movies? Mainly more from Terrifier. Anyway, I hope you have a great day. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And remember, stay scared. Dead scared.